The Red Void was one of the most feared places in the known galaxy. It was not just a battlefield, it was a graveyard. Broken ships floated through the darkness like dead bones in deep water. Pieces of metal turned slowly in silence. Old fires still burned on some wrecks, glowing like dying stars. No one entered the Red Void unless they had no other choice. For 3 long years, the Varkle Dominion had ruled that region with terror. They came from beyond the Outer Rim and moved from system to system without mercy. Their ships were black and sharp, shaped like giant blades. Their weapons were fast, heavy, and impossible to stop. Many worlds had already fallen. Many fleets had tried to fight them. None had lasted. Now another battle was forming in the Red Void. An alliance fleet of 12 races waited near the edge of the Warzone. Hundreds of ships held position in long defensive lines. Command signals moved between them every second. Warnings filled the channels. Fear sat heavy in every bridge and every war room. The alliance had gathered everything it could, but deep down, most commanders knew the truth. If the Varkle attacked with full force again, this battle would end like all the others. Admiral Corvin of the Thalan stood at the front command deck of the Alliance flagship and stared into the dark. He was old, tall, and hard like stone. He had fought in more wars than most living officers. Even so, his hands were tight behind his back. Report lights flashed around him. "Enemy fleet confirmed," said a sensor officer. Varkle forces moving into attack formation. The large screen at the center of the bridge changed. Dark shapes appeared one by one. First 20 ships, then 50, then more. Each one was huge. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a moon colony. Corvan said nothing for a moment. Then he asked, "How long before contact?" 7 minutes. The bridge fell into silence. On other Alliance ships, crews checked weapons, sealed bulkheads, and prepared for impact. Pilots sat ready in strike craft, though most knew they would never return. Med bays were already open. Escape pods were armed. Final messages were being sent to families from 100 worlds. Then something unexpected happened. A new signal appeared on the tactical map. Small at first, distant, then growing larger. An officer leaned forward. "Unknown fleet entering from Sector 9. Corvin turned sharply. "Identify them." The officer scanned again and frowned. "Human." That single word spread across the bridge like a strange wind. "Human." Another officer said. "Here, there are only 12 ships," someone else added. "That cannot be right." The screen zoomed in. There were 12 human warships moving in clean formation toward the Red Void. They looked different from Alliance designs. Smooth hulls, heavy armor, no glowing shield fields around them. Their shapes were simple and hard, built for function, not beauty. In the center flew one larger command ship with the name Haich Relentless marked along its side. Corvan narrowed his eyes. Humanity had joined the Alliance less than 30 years earlier. They were respected for industry and engineering, but no one thought of them as masters of war. They had fought border conflicts and pirate fleets, but never anything like the Varkle Dominion. Not in open war, not in a place like this. "Did we call for them?" Corvin asked. "No, Admiral." "Then why are they here?" Before anyone could answer, a communication request appeared. "Incoming message from human flagship." Corvin gave a short nod. "Put it through." The screen changed again. A human male appeared, middle-aged, dark uniform, calm face, eyes that looked too steady for someone entering the worst battlefield in the galaxy. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the Human Fleet Task Group Raptor," he said. "We are entering the Warzone." Corvan stepped closer. "Captain Ward, this area is under Alliance command. The Varkle are moments away from attack. Your fleet is too small. Withdraw now." Ward did not move. Request denied. A few officers on the bridge stared at the screen in disbelief. Corvan's voice hardened. "This is not a heroic story. This is a death zone. If your ships move forward, they will be destroyed." Ward answered with the same calm tone. "Understood. Then leave." "Negative. We came to engage." Corvin felt anger rise, but under it was confusion. No fear, no hesitation, just that quiet human voice, like he was discussing weather. "What exactly do you believe 12 ships can do here?" Corvin asked. Ward looked straight ahead. "Enough." Then the screen went dark. An uneasy murmur spread across the bridge. "He is insane," one officer said. "Or arrogant," said another. Corvin kept watching the tactical display. The human fleet did not slow down. It passed the outer alliance line and moved deeper into the red void, straight toward the incoming enemy. Then, the worst possible warning hit the bridge. "Energy surge detected," shouted the sensor officer. "Captain, the human ships are losing shield output." The screen lit up with red symbols. One by one, every human ship showed the same status. Shield failure. Complete. Instant. For a second, no one on the bridge spoke. Then chaos broke loose. Their shields collapsed. All ships, they are exposed. Did the Varkle hit them already? Corvin stepped closer to the tactical screen. The human ships were still moving, but the blue light of shield protection was gone. They were naked in open battle. One direct strike from the Varkle would tear them apart. "Open channel," Corvan. Now, a moment later, the link returned. Captain Ward appeared again. "Your shields have failed," Corvan snapped. "Fall back immediately." Ward glanced to one side, as if checking a normal system report. Then he looked back. "That was expected." Corvin stared at him. "Expected? Yes. What kind of answer is that?" Ward's face did not change. "Admiral, keep your fleet back. Do not advance. Do not interfere. Your ships are defenseless." Only from your point of view. Before Corvin could answer, the line closed again. On the bridge, even the air seemed to stop. "What does that mean?" whispered one officer. No one had an answer. Outside, the Varkle fleet spread across the dark like a black storm. Their leading ships slowed and began charging weapons. Red light gathered along their hulls. Target locks moved across the human formation. The Alliance channels exploded with panic. The humans are dead. Why are they still moving forward? They have no shields. They should retreat. But they did not retreat. The human ships kept moving. Steady, silent, straight into the war zone. Inside the Etchies relentless, Captain Elias Ward stood on a dim command deck filled with quiet humans. No one shouted. No one panicked. Officers watched their screens with sharp focus. Each had trained for this moment many times in simulation, though none had ever faced the real thing. "Distance to enemy opening range," said a weapons officer. 3 minutes. "Status of line ships," Ward asked. "All 12 confirmed. Shield systems offline. Armor plates locked. Overdrive channels stable." Ward nodded once. A young lieutenant near the navigation station looked tense, though she tried not to show it. Ward noticed. "First combat operation?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "You know the plan?" "Yes, sir." "Then trust it." She took a breath and straightened. "Yes, sir." Ward turned back to the main screen. On it, the Varkle fleet looked endless. Many species tried to survive war by building stronger walls, stronger shields, thicker lines, safer positions. Humans had studied that idea for centuries, and then they had built something else. Back on the Alliance flagship, Admiral Corvan could only watch. The human fleet had entered the kill zone. Their shields had failed instantly. The enemy was charging weapons. Every fact in front of him pointed to disaster. Yet the one thing he could not explain was the way those human ships moved. Not like victims, not like fools, not like desperate heroes trying to die with honor. They moved like hunters. The first Varkle weapons fired. Red beams crossed the darkness. The battle had begun. The first Varkle strike slammed into the lead human destroyer with enough force to split a city in half. Alliance officers expected the ship to vanish in fire. Many even turned away before the impact finished. But the ship did not explode. It shook hard. Its hull burned bright where the beam struck. Molten metal sprayed into space. Warning lights flashed across the surface. Yet the ship kept moving forward. Then a second strike hit. Then a third. Still the human destroyer held formation. On the Alliance flagship, every eye locked on the screen. "How is it still intact?" one officer whispered. Sensor teams rushed to update readings. Energy scans came back strange. The human ships had no active shields. That was true. But their armor density was far beyond expected levels. Layered plates shifted under the surface, absorbing and redirecting force in ways Alliance technology did not fully understand. Admiral Corvan frowned. "Magnify that forward ship." The image zoomed closer. The human vessel was scarred and glowing at several points, yet it was not falling apart. Sections of its outer hull had split open, revealing darker plates beneath. "Multiple armor layers," said the sensor officer. "Perhaps more than 10. Another beam crashed into the formation. This time 2 human ships were hit at once. One lost a side battery. Another spun slightly off course, then corrected and kept going. Still no retreat. Still no panic. They are taking direct hits just to close distance, said Corvin. That is suicide, another commander muttered. But even as he said it, no one fully believed him. Inside the hatch, relentless shockwaves rolled through the command deck. Lights dimmed for half a second, then stabilized. Report, Ward said. Forward destroyer Valiant took 3 impacts. Outer armor lost. Secondary hull secure. Battle cruiser Ember has surface damage on port side. Weapon still green. Good, Ward replied. The young lieutenant at navigation looked pale now, but her hand stayed steady. Enemy expects shield warfare, Ward said to the bridge. They are using maximum burst fire against dead system. Let them waste the heat. Some officers allowed themselves thin smiles. Not because the danger was low. It was not. 3 more hits like that on the wrong angle, and any ship in the group could die. But there was comfort in hearing a calm voice and fire. Range? Ward asked. Closing. 2 minutes to first strike window. The tactical officer looked up. Enemy center mass is overcommitting. They think we are already broken. Ward's eyes sharpened. Exactly where we want them back, with the Alliance fleet. Confusion began turning into disbelief. The human ships were not only surviving, they were getting closer. The Varkol had expected easy kills, so their first line had advanced aggressively, opening gaps between support wings. Their formation was tightening around the humans, trying to crush them in a single wave. Corvin understood battle math well enough to see the risk in that. If the humans had some hidden plan, the Varkol might be walking straight into it. A new signal came from one of the Alliance flanks. Commander Cell of the Irani cruisers requested permission to move forward and cover the humans. Corvin denied it at once. Hold position, he ordered. We do not know what they are doing. With respect, Admiral, Cell replied. If we do nothing, they die alone. Corvin watched the screen a few seconds more. Then he said quietly, or we die with them and ruin whatever chance they believe they have. Hold position. The order was obeyed, though not happily. The next Varkol volley came faster. Dozens of smaller attack beams and kinetic rounds crossed the void. One human frigate took a direct strike to its side and lost engines. For a moment, it drifted. Fire poured from the breach. Then emergency thrusters activated, and the ship rolled back into line. Alliance channels went silent again. That kind of damage should have ended it. Still, the humans advanced. Captain Ward studied the growing field of enemy ships. Their front line was almost within ideal range. Massive Varkol cruisers pushed forward with open weapon ports and hot reactors. Their commanders clearly believed the battle was nearly won. They were firing hard, heating their systems, feeding more power into guns, more and more, trying to finish the humans before the Alliance could react. Ward had expected exactly. Human war doctrine had changed after the first border wars. They had learned that survival was not always about blocking enemy fire. Sometimes it was about controlling what the enemy believed. If an enemy thought you were weak, he moved closer. If he thought you were dying, he stopped being careful. If he believed the battle was already his, he made mistakes. And the Varkol were making them now. Signal all ships, Ward said. The communication officer nodded. Ward spoke clearly. Phase 2 in 30 seconds. All captains confirm one by one. Green lights appeared across his console. 12 confirmations. Even the damaged ships. The lieutenant at navigation looked at the timer counting down. Sir, she said softly, they really think we are broken. Ward gave the smallest nod. Good. On the far side of the war zone, the Varkol command vessel launched another burst. Its main spinal cannon lit the dark with red fire. The beam struck the human flagship directly across the bow. The Alliance fleet gasped. The hitch relentless disappeared in burning light. Corvin felt his chest tighten. Then the beam ended. The human flagship emerged from the blast scarred, but alive. Armor plates had burned away from the front section. Smoke and debris spun into space. One forward turret was gone, but the ship was still coming. And then, for the first time, Alliance sensors detected something new. Energy. Not from shields, not from engines, from inside the ships themselves. Deep, focused, rising fast. Admiral, said the sensor chief, voice shaking, all human vessels are building internal power levels beyond safe limits. To weapons, no clear reading. It is spread across the hull, engineering core, rail systems, target arrays. I have never seen anything like it. Corvin watched as dim lines appeared across each human ship, like veins of light under metal skin. The ships began to glow in thin patterns from bow to stern. The human fleet formation shifted, not retreating, not breaking, opening, like claws. Inside the relentless, every officer now stood fully locked into battle rhythm. Core overdrive active, said engineer. Heat stabilizers locked, said weapon. Magnetic rails at full surge. Ward looked at the main screen one last time. The Varkal center line was exactly where it needed to be, packed too close. Shields angled forward, exposed at the joints, at the engines, at the weapon throats, all from trying to kill 12 human ships as fast as possible. Target solution? Ward asked. Complete, fire spread, perfect. The young lieutenant swallowed and whispered, "This is really going to work." Ward did not answer her directly. He simply gave the order. All ships, every bridge and task group Raptor listened. Prepare to fire. Out, in the red void. The Alliance fleet held its breath. The Varkal charged another killing volley. The human ships glowed brighter, and for one strange frozen second, the whole battlefield seemed to wait. When Captain Ward gave the order to fire, the human fleet did not answer with panic or desperation. It answered with discipline. Each ship and task group Raptor had been built for one purpose only: not to survive long battles, not to defend worlds for months, not to exchange fire in slow lines like the old fleets of the Alliance. These ships were made to break stronger enemies in a single violent window. The human fleet had spent years studying the Varkal Dominion in silence. Every attack pattern, every shield cycle, every heat curve, every flaw in their armor, every proud habit in their commanders. Human analysts had watched battles lost by other species and found one repeating truth. The Varkal always pushed hardest when they sensed weakness. They never expected a wounded enemy to come closer on purpose. So humanity designed ships around that mistake. Inside the hitches relentless, Ward stood with both hands behind his back as final target lines locked into place. "Mark all primary weaknesses," he said. "Confirmed," replied the tactical officer. "Weapon throws, shield vents, spine joints, engine necks, fire chain by division. Destroyer wing first, then cruisers, then frag ship burst all around him." Screens flashed green. The lieutenant at navigation now understood at least part of the truth. The shield failure had not been a failure at all. Human shields had been shut down before entering combat because their new combat system needed enormous power. That energy was not wasted on defense. It was moved into something far more dangerous. Their ships were not shield ships. They were impact ships. The outer armor was built in layers that cracked, shifted, and burned without passing full force inward. Beneath it sat dense magnetic rail cores and guided strike tube. Every human vessel carried precision kill weapons designed to punch through exact weak points rather than simply overwhelm targets with volume. They had entered the war zone looking exposed. In truth, they had entered loaded like a blade. "Enemy still charging forward," said the sensor officer. "Of course they are," Ward replied. "They think fear belongs to us." He looked up at the tactical map and saw the enemy center compress even tighter. The Varkal command ships were ordering close kill formation. It was their standard endgame move: surround the damaged prey, crush it from all sides, leave nothing alive. Humanity had counted on that too. Back on the Alliance flagship, Admiral Corvin could not look away. The energy readings on the human ships were now impossible to ignore. Even officers who had mocked them minutes earlier now stood in silence. Commander Sell opened a secure line again. "Admiral," he said. "What are they doing?" Corvin answered honestly. "I think we are about to find out." The human formation changed once more. The front destroyers tilted slightly inward. Cruisers widened the middle. The flagship remained at the center like the point of a spear. Then the first shots came. They did not look like ordinary cannon fire. Thin white lines burst from the human destroyers at extreme speed, almost too fast to follow. There was no wide glow, no dramatic charge, no warning flare, just hard white strikes cutting across the void. The first line of Varkal ships took the hits. Nothing happened for half a second. Then 3 enemy cruisers exploded at once. Not surface damage, not broken shield, complete internal detonation. Alliance bridges erupted in shock. What happened? Did they hit the reactors? How did those shots pass through the shield? The answer appeared on sensors almost immediately. The human weapons had struck tiny points where the Varkal shield grid shifted during forward attack posture, places no Alliance weapon had ever used because they were visible for less than a second. Human computers had timed everything to the breath of a machine. Another human volley followed, this time from the cruiser. Guided lance rounds and rail slugs crossed the dark in waves, each one hit with brutal accuracy. One Varkal battleship lost all forward guns in a chain of exploding ports. Another spun out as both engine necks vanished in fire. A third split across the center where its spine joint failed under direct kinetic impact. The Varkal line wavered. For the first time, they were not the hunters. They were the ones being opened. Inside the relentless, officers called targets with sharp short words: left flank vent, center throat, rear engine joint, confirmed kill, confirmed kill, confirmed kill. Ward never raised his voice. Continue pattern. Do not chase. Break their center first. The lieutenant finally allowed herself to breathe. The impossible was happening. 12 damaged human ships were tearing apart a fleet many times their size. But Ward knew better than to celebrate. The dangerous moment was only beginning. Enemy adapting, said tactical. Rear line pulling back. Command ship raising full shield inversion. Ward nodded. There it is. The Varkal had realized too late that this was not random resistance. It was an execution pattern. Their rear commanders began trying to widen formation and restore shield flexibility. If they succeeded, the human kill window would close. Task Group Raptor had less than a minute to finish the work. Ward gave a new order. Activate brake hammer on alliance channels. No one knew what that meant. Then the human flagship answered for them. The hit's relentless slowed for only a second. Its damaged bow split open along hidden seams. A long magnetic core pushed forward from inside the ship like a steel spine. Energy gathered around it in hard white arcs. Every surviving power channel from the fleet fed into that single weapon. Corvin stared. What in the stars is that? The weapon fired. The shot looked less like a missile and more like a small star being thrown. It crossed the battlefield in one savage line and struck the main Varkal command ship dead center. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the command ship's entire front half disappeared. The back half drifted, burning and broken, before secondary blasts tore it apart from within. Without their center command, the Varkal line collapsed into disorder, and the humans kept firing. Destroyers carved open escort ships. Cruisers cut engines from heavy carriers. The wounded human frigate, the one that had nearly been lost earlier, launched its full missile bank into a cluster of retreating corvettes and erased them in a blossom of fire. The red void became a storm of wreckage. Alliance crews watched in total silence. Some forgot to speak. Some forgot to breathe. For 3 years, the Varkal Dominion had been the nightmare. No fleet could stop. Now 12 human ships were tearing through them in less time than a command briefing. Count enemy losses, Corvin ordered. The numbers came in so fast they almost made no sense. 10 destroyed, 23, 31, 48, and still rising. Remaining enemy minute strength? He asked. Falling apart, said the sensor chief. They are trying to retreat, but their own wrecks are trapping them. Ward saw the same on his screen. Final sweep, he ordered. 30-second finish. Task Group Raptor obeyed instantly. The next attack was the cleanest of all. Human guns did not fire wildly into panic. They struck one system after another with cold control. Engines, bridges, weapons, reactors. Not because humans enjoyed destruction, but because they had learned something ancient. A quick end to battle saved lives later. One by one, the last major Varkal warships went dark. The battlefield fell quiet. Burning wrecks drifted where an unstoppable fleet had stood. From first human volley to final kill, less than 1 minute had passed. On the Alliance flagship, even veteran officers could not find words. Admiral Corvin looked at the screen, then at the timer, then back again. 1 minute. That was all it had taken. The human fleet, scarred and smoking, slowly reduced speed in the middle of the red void. They had entered the war zone with failed shields. They had been hit first. They had looked close to death. And then they had ended the battle before the enemy could understand what was happening. Corvin spoke at last, and his voice was almost a whisper. Who are these people? Silence spread across the red void in a way no one had expected. Not the silence of peace. Not yet. It was the silence that comes after something impossible happens, and every witness is left trying to understand what they just saw. Wreckage turned slowly through the battlefield. Broken Varkal hulls burned from the inside out. Some drifted in halves. Some were nothing more than expanding clouds of metal and frozen flame. Scattered escape pods appeared on sensors, but most belonged to Alliance crews from earlier battles. Almost none were Varkal. Task Group Raptor held position in the middle of it all. The 12 human ships were damaged. Several had torn armor. One frigate had lost an engine line. Another had whole sections blackened from direct beam impact. The flagship itself looked as though it had been dragged through a star furnace. Yet they had survived. And not only survived, they had erased the most feared fleet in that region of space in under 1 minute. Aboard the Alliance flagship, shock slowly gave way to movement again. Medical teams stood down from emergency wave response. Fighter squadrons remained in launch bays, forgotten. Officers leaned over consoles and tried to gather fresh data, though many kept looking back at the tactical timer as if it must be wrong. Admiral Corvan finally spoke. "Open a fleet-wide channel." The signal went out to every Alliance vessel still in the red void. "This is Admiral Corvan. Maintain position. Scan for hidden contacts. Recover survivors where possible. No ship will advance on the human formation without my order." He paused, then added, "And mark this battle as Alliance control restored." There was a short silence after that, perhaps because no one had expected to hear such words today. Then confirmations came from every ship. Commander Cell opened a private line. "Admiral, with respect, control restored by whom?" Corvin looked toward the human fleet and answered, "That is exactly what I intend to find out." He requested communication with the HSS Relentless. For several seconds, there was no answer. Then the screen lit up with Captain Elias Ward once again. There was a new burn mark along one side of his bridge behind him, and one officer in the background had blood on his sleeve. But Ward himself looked as calm as before. "Admiral," he said. Corvin studied him in silence. It was not anger anymore, not even suspicion. It was the sharp attention one warrior gives another after seeing something extraordinary. "You ended the battle," Corvin said. Ward replied simply, "Yes." "In less than a minute, yes." "With 12 ships," Ward gave a small nod. "Also yes." A few bridge officers around Corvin looked almost offended by how dry the human answer was. Corvin ignored them. "You entered without shields. You allowed the enemy to strike first. You held course under direct fire. Then you destroyed their center line with impossible precision. I want the truth, Captain. What kind of fleet is this?" Ward did not answer at once. Finally he said, "The kind built for this enemy that was not enough." Corvin took a step closer to the screen. "For 3 years we have fought the Varkal Dominion. We lost worlds. We lost millions. Every fleet we sent broke against them. Yet you arrived with 12 ships and cut them apart in moments. Either humanity has been hiding a great deal, or we have all been fighting the wrong war." For the first time, Ward showed something close to emotion. Not pride, not mockery, something quieter. "You have been fighting to survive," he said. "We came to end it." Those words settled over the bridge like weight. Corvin knew arrogance when he heard it. This was not arrogance. It was a statement. "Then explain." Ward glanced to one side, perhaps at his own officers, then back again. "We will share what matters. But not here. Not yet. We are still in an active graveyard with damaged ships and uncertain space. Send recovery team. Keep your outer lines wide. If a second Varkal formation was shadowing this fleet, it may already be moving." Corvin reacted instantly. He had almost forgotten that possibility in the shock. "All fleet groups," he ordered at once. "Expand SensorNet to maximum range. Begin full threat sweep. Recovery wings. Launch now." Confirmations filled the room. For the next hour, Alliance ships moved carefully through the red void. Recovery craft searched the wrecks. Small teams pulled survivors from old broken hulls and fresh damaged compartments alike. Some Alliance sailors wept openly when they realized they were not recovering bodies from a lost battle, but rescuing the living from a won-one. Human recovery teams worked too, but in their own efficient way. They did not celebrate. They did not waste motion. They collected data, sealed damaged sections, and towed a crippled frigate into support position. Even after doing what none thought possible, they behaved like workers in the middle of a difficult job. That unsettled many Alliance officers more than victory itself. On one cruiser, an Irani commander said it plainly over a secure line. "They did not act like this was legendary. They acted like this was expected." The remark spread quickly through senior channels. And it was true. The humans had entered the red void with the confidence of people already prepared for the result. Later, when the first scans confirmed no hidden Varkal reserve fleet nearby, Admiral Corvin accepted Ward's request for a direct meeting. Not over open channel, not through screens. In person, the location chosen was a neutral transfer deck aboard the Alliance flagship. Security teams lined the chamber, not because Corvin feared attack, but because protocol demanded it. Officers from 6 species stood along the walls, each wanting to see the human commander with their own eyes. The door opened. Captain Elias Ward entered with only 2 officers behind him. He was taller than he had looked on screen. Older, too. Lines marked his face, but his steps were steady. His uniform was dark gray, plain except for a small human insignia and the mark of Fleet Command. There were burns along one sleeve. He seemed not to notice them. Corvin stepped forward. For a moment both commanders simply looked at each other, measuring. Then Corvin said, "Captain Ward, Admiral." They exchanged formal greeting. One Alliance officer could not hold back. "Why did you not warn us?" she asked. "If you had this power, why wait?" Ward turned to her. "Because power seen too early is power countered early." No one answered that. Corvin gestured toward the tactical table and the wreck data and battle replay moved across its surface. "Show us," Ward did. For the next hour, the chamber listened in silence as human battle doctrine unfolded piece by piece. Not all secrets, not all engineering, but enough to understand the shape of it. Humans had watched how every Alliance race fought the Varkle and saw the same fatal problem. They all defended first. They all tried to absorb the opening storm and answer later. But the Varkle opening storm was designed to crush hesitation. Their shields were strong only from expected angles. Their command ships overcommitted when confidence was high. Their attack posture created micro-gaps no one had exploited because no one had survived close enough, long enough, or calmly enough. Human ships were made to do exactly that, not by being stronger in every way, but by refusing to fight the battle the enemy expected. "They hit us first because we wanted them to," Ward said. "We let them believe the first minute belonged to them. Once they committed heat, formation, and confidence, the battle was already turning." One Alliance commander shook his head slowly. "You used your own weakness as bait, Ward, and apparent weakness." Corvin studied the battle map and finally understood the deepest truth. The human fleet had not won because it was reckless. It had won because it was patient. It had spent years preparing for 1 minute. And then he asked the question that mattered most. "How many more fleets like yours does humanity have?" For the first time since entering the room, Ward was silent longer than usual. Then he said, "Enough." The meeting ended, but the tension it created did not. If anything, it grew. Word spread fast through the Alliance fleet, first as whispers between officers, then as direct reports to sector leaders, then as stunned messages sent across secured channels to worlds far beyond the Red Void. The Varkle fleet had been destroyed. The Red Void had been retaken. A human strike group with only 12 ships had done it. Many would hear the news and call it impossible. Some would assume the numbers were wrong. Others would believe the Alliance had hidden the truth to protect morale. But every sensor log, every combat timer, and every surviving witness said the same thing. Humanity had walked into the worst battlefield in the region with no shields and left it as victor. Inside the Alliance flagship, Admiral Corvin stood alone for a while in the war observation chamber and watched replay footage. Every time he expected the battle to look less shocking on second view, it became more shocking, because now he understood what he was seeing. Not luck, not madness, not a miracle. Design. The human fleet had entered the Red Void already knowing where the Varkle would move, how hard they would commit, how long their shield angles would remain vulnerable, and what exact second to kill their command center. They had accepted damage as part of timing. They had built ships around taking that damage and staying alive just long enough to turn it back. Corvin had spent his life mastering fleet defense, lines, support arcs, reserve timing, layered shields. He had always believed the best commander was the one who protected his people long enough for the enemy to fail. The humans believed something colder. Make the enemy fail first. Captain Ward stood on the observation deck of his own flagship, looking over the graveyard they had created. One of his officers approached. "All damaged vessels report stable enough for movements. Casualties, 2 dead, 17 injured across the group." Ward closed his eyes for 1 second. Only 2. Against a force that had erased worlds, that was a miracle by every measure. But to him, it still meant 2 names, 2 letters to families, 2 empty chairs after the mission. "Make sure they are remembered," he said quietly. "Yes, sir." The officer hesitated. Alliance Command is requesting further tactical exchange. They also want to know if this operation was authorized as first contact combat doctrine. Reveal. Ward gave a tired half-smile. Of course they do. Your answer? Tell them they will receive what command allows. Nothing more. The officer nodded and left. Ward remained by the glass, watching broken Varkal hulls drift past like dark ghosts. He had fought enough to know what victory looked like. It did not always feel bright. Sometimes it felt like silence after a door finally slammed shut. But this victory would have consequences beyond one battlefield. The Alliance had spent years seeing humans as useful partners, clever builders, determined workers, and surprisingly stubborn soldiers. After today, that view would change. Some species would respect humanity more. Some would fear it. Some would begin counting how many human fleets existed and where they were stationed. Ward did not enjoy that thought, but he accepted it. Back in the Alliance Command Center, senior officers gathered for another private session with, and a small human technical. This time, the questions were sharper. An Irani strategist leaned over the tactical display. Why did your government never share this doctrine before now? A human analyst answered, because doctrine revealed before use is doctrine wasted. That sounds like distrust. It is caution. Another commander asked, did you know the Varkal would target your ship so aggressively the moment your shields vanished? Ward answered that one himself. Yes. How? Because pride is predictable. A murmur passed through the room. Ward continued. The Varkal built their victories on shock. They overwhelm in the opening minute. They rely on fear-breaking formation. Every report you shared confirmed the same pattern. Once they smell collapse, they stop fighting carefully. Corvin folded his arms. And you built an entire fleet to punish that. No, Ward said. We built an entire response system to punish that. The fleet is only one shape of it. Several officers looked at him sharply. Corvin caught the meaning first. One shape? Ward met his eyes. Humanity prepares for enemies in layers. Naval response is one layer. That answer produced more silence than anyone expected. No one liked imagining what the other layers might be. Yet even in that tension, respect had entered the room. Not warm respect, not easy respect, but the kind forged when soldiers see results they cannot deny. Commander Sell, who had wanted earlier to rush forward and shield the humans, finally spoke. I misjudged you, Captain. Ward looked at him. Most did. Sell gave a hard breath that almost sounded like a laugh. I thought your fleet had blundered into a slaughter, Ward answered. We counted on that too. Even Corvin allowed the corner of his mouth to move at that. The session continued for hours. Alliance engineers studied battle fragments. Human officers explained what they could without exposing full weapon architecture. The picture that emerged was clear enough. Humanity had not become strong by copying older empire. It had become dangerous by studying defeat, then refusing to repeat it. Where others improved shields, humans improved survival after shield blow. Where others built for long exchange, humans built for precision ending. Where others feared taking damage, humans planned around controlled damage as part of attack timing. One Alliance scientist said it best at the end. You did not build for comfort in war. You built for decision. Ward nodded once. Yes. By the time the meeting closed, recovery operations in the Red Void were nearly complete. Alliance salvage teams were already towing wreckage for study. News vessels would arrive later. Diplomats, too. Politicians, committees, arguments, praise, fear. But for the crews who had actually watched the battle, none of that mattered yet. What mattered was that, for the first time in 3 years, the Varkal had been beaten so completely that the myth of their invincibility was broken. And myths, once broken, never fully return. Admiral Corvin walked with Ward toward the transfer corridor after the final briefing. You realize what happens now, Corvin said. Ward looked ahead. Yes, every government in the Alliance will ask how many fleets you have. Yes. They will ask where you place them, I know. They will ask whether humanity intends to lead the next stage of the war. Ward stopped at the corridor entrance and turned toward him. That depends, he said. On what? On whether your Alliance wants to win or only survive a little longer. Corvin held his gaze. Then, slowly, the old admiral gave a single nod. Because after what he had seen in the Red Void, he knew the hardest truth of all. Humanity had not simply saved the Alliance fleet. Humanity had changed the way this war would be fought. 3 days after the battle in the Red Void, the galaxy still felt the shock. Messages crossed every secure network in every major system. Military channels replayed the combat footage frame by frame. Politicians argued over what it meant. Civilian worlds, once used to hearing only bad news from the Varkal front, heard a different kind of report for the first time in years. One victory had become more than a victory. It had become a signal. The Varkal could be beaten, not delayed, not pushed back for a week, not hurt before returning stronger. Beaten. On human worlds, the news was handled with careful silence at first. Official statements were short. A tactical success. Ongoing operations. No discussion of fleet numbers. No release of weapon details. Humanity celebrated differently from many alliance races. There were no loud declarations from Earth Command. No dramatic public speeches. No boasting from Admiral. To some alliance observers, that restraint felt almost more unsettling than open pride would. If humanity had done something that historic and still acted calm, then perhaps this really had been expected. Inside Alliance political circle, fear mixed with gratitude. Gratitude because a nightmare front had been broken. Fear because no one liked learning that a partner had been hiding this much military power and patience. In one emergency council meeting on the world of Selenar, a Thalan diplomat said it openly. We asked humans for support. We did not know we were inviting a species that studies war like mathematics. On another world, a trade minister replied, be thankful they used that mathematics on our enemies. But not every voice was comfortable. Some alliance leaders remembered Ward's words too clearly. We came to end it. That line moved across private reports and intelligence files like a blade. To some it sounded heroic. To others it sounded dangerous. Back in the Red Void, Task Group Raptor completed final repairs and prepared for departure. Alliance ships now moved around the human formation with visible respect. No more mockery, no more whispers about reckless newcomers. Sailors from different species watched the human vessels pass and knew they had seen something they would tell their children. Aboard the Hitch Relentless, the mood remained steady. Crews repaired hull damage, replaced burned rails, and honored their dead in a small private service. No music echoed through the halls, no shouting, just names spoken clearly one by one before duty resumed. Captain Ward attended without a speech. Afterward, he returned to the bridge and received a secure transmission from Earth Command. The symbol of Fleet High Command appeared on his main screen. Behind it sat Admiral Helen Reese, commander of Outer Defense Response. Report, she said. Ward gave it plainly. Enemy fleet destroyed. Task group damaged but operational. Alliance front restored. Doctrine exposure partial but manageable. Reis listened without interruption. When he finished, she asked only one question. How did the Alliance react? Ward considered for a moment. They now understand that humanity prepared more than they thought. Do they trust us? Some respect us. Some fear us. Most are still deciding, Reyes nodded once. That was always coming. She touched a control and another tactical map appeared beside her. It showed not one war zone, but several. Outer system. Broken fronts. Distress corridor. Places where Varkal attacks had spread while the Alliance struggled to hold. We are receiving new reports, she said. The Dominion is shifting. Fast. Ward looked closely. Retreat? Partly. Reinforcement in other sectors too. They have realized the Red Void was not an accident. They will adapt, yes, Reyes said. So will we. Ward watched the map in silence. Then he asked, where do you need us? Reyes answered, stand by for redeployment. More task groups are moving. For the first time in the conversation, even Ward looked slightly surprised. More? A faint line touched Reyes's expression. Did you think Raptor was the only one? The channel closed. Around Ward, several bridge officers exchanged looks. None had expected full numbers, but hearing it that way made the truth larger somehow. The lieutenant from navigation, now less new than before, looked toward him. Sir, how many more fleets are there? Ward stared at the map for a second longer before answering. Enough. The same word again. But now it felt heavier. On the Alliance flagship, Admiral Corvin prepared his own report for the Grand Council. He knew they would want data, caution, political balance, and calm military language. He would give them that. But he would also give them something else. Honesty. He recorded his statement personally. The Battle of the Red Void has changed current war assumptions. The Varkal Dominion remains a severe threat. However, they are not invincible. Human naval doctrine proved decisive under conditions where traditional alliance response had failed repeatedly. I advise immediate strategic review and full cooperative planning with human command. This is not optional if victory is our goal. He paused, then added a line not written in the prepared draft. We have spent years asking how to endure this. Humanity may be asking the better question, how to finish it. That message would travel far. Hours later, as Task Group Raptor prepared to leave the Red Void, Alliance ships formed a corridor for them. Not a ceremony by official order. No one had called for it. It simply happened. Vessel after vessel moved aside and held position as the human fleet passed between them. Lights flashed across holes in the Corvin stood on his bridge and watched the 12 damaged ships move through the corridor like iron survivors. "Signal Captain Ward," he said. The line opened. "For what it is worth," Corvin said, "history will remember what your fleet did here." Ward's face appeared on the screen one last time. Tired now, though still controlled. "History remembers many things badly," he said. "Win the war. That is enough." The line closed. The human fleet accelerated and disappeared into the dark. Corvin stood quiet for a long time after that, far beyond the Red Void, in hidden Varkal command nests and shadow relay stations. New warnings were already being sent. Not about Alliance fleets, not about numbers, not about territory, about humans, the prey that had entered with broken shield, the prey that had let them strike first, the prey that had turned into death in less than a minute. And across the stars, from military halls to frightened enemy channels, one truth began to spread. When human fleets entered a war zone, the battle did not last long.